Hello and welcome to the GM's Book Club, a podcast where we take a role-playing game, read it cover to cover, rate, review, and recount what we think about it. There you go. Got the recount rather than discussed in there.
That was really good. I forgot. I only remember the cover to cover bit.
Cover to cover. Yeah, you've got to do the hand gestures cover to cover. With me, as always, is my wonderful co-host Hamilton, who's back again for GM's Book Club. Hello, Hamilton. How are you doing?
Hello. Yes, I know. It feels like a long time since we've done this.
Yeah, GM's Book Club for sure.
Yeah, we've done other things. We've done some really fun things which are out now, actually. I don't know how long it'll be till this comes out, but I've been enjoying. Actually enjoying something I was in. Our excursion into the sci-fi TTRP podcast of our friends.
It's very hard to do, isn't it?
As a word say. The Backwater Bastards.
Yes, in space.
In space. Oh my gosh, it was really good. If I do say so ourselves.
Yeah, I also think we were very good. It's one of those things where obviously Backward Bastards is one of our favourite podcasts. It's written by our favourite people, and then obviously we got asked to do it, and then also it's kind of like I can hear myself going like, oh, I'm really enjoying it. It's always like, oh, we're there too, and I'm just saying like, Fiona, you're a cool podcaster. Just be cool, man.
I've never felt so like in someone's house before. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, I feel like. It's probably good for me. I need a bit of that. Do you know what I mean? It's probably why I did better than usual. Because I was like, you're in someone's house, you've got to take your shoes off. You've got to sit quietly and do this.
You've got to learn what the rules are. You've got to roll that dice. Yeah, exactly. So, I had somebody message me who's does follow like RP Geeks and stuff like that, and they said they emailed me. This is the thing, it's random when I get an email, and they said like, I've been following you stuff on RP Geeks, and then when I found out you were in Backwater Bastards, it's one of my favourite podcasts, and you and Hamilton were so funny and this.
Good.
And I was just going like, thank you. It's one of our favourite podcasts too. Like we're both like, fanning over.
Amazing. It was really good fun, and it's like, spending time with those kooky cats is always like the best fun ever. But being able to talk to Boris is like, I don't know, it's weird. Like we know that Tay and Dan and Dick so well, but I actually kind of separate them from their characters quite a lot.
Podcast personas from our friends. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. And it's kind of weird then when you're like, oh, these are actually them, because I listen to the podcast, and even when I listen to podcasts, I kind of have it slightly separated from them, because they're such good actors, I guess. And so it was kind of like, there was kind of a weird experience. You're like, oh, it's just them playing them.
It's just them being really cool, and then obviously taking the time to edit and like be funny, and I know. And then we're there like bloody chuckleheads, almost dying in the first bit. No spoilers, but just going like, God, yeah, we could have just ended that episode.
But we were meant to be lovable scamps that were idiots. Like we were meant to be crap, so I think it was on point that we died.
But you almost died, and I almost died. I'm just like, well, that's the end of the episode for us. We'll stay here for the rest of the.
Exactly, we'll stay here for the next hour and a half. So yeah, that was fun.
But enough about our cool plug on a different podcast. Hamilton, what are we talking about today on the GM's Book Club? What is our topic of choice?
Our topic of choice today is, I'd say, like, maybe fan favourite in the TTRPG space, sort of like a golden child of the modern day RPG scene. I'd say like a great story behind its success, which is a wonderfully grim and perilous Shadowdark. TLDR of it, to coin your phrase, is that it is
copyrighted.
Copyright TM. Copyright at TM is that it's like old school rules like D&D. In a nutshell, even less rules light than Mork Borg, but definitely not like, I wouldn't even say it's nearly halfway a step. I think it's like a quarter step up to D&D again. I think there's even like, it kind of really distills it down and is very much D&D focused, but old school D&D. It definitely has its vibes more in the darker, more brutal versions of D&D of like 1E, 2E era, maybe even before the 3E, 3.5E sort of switch, which changed D&D into its modern setting. And then if we ignore 4 as a sort of like outlier, that's kind of what, like 3.5 and 5 are very similarly grafted, I guess, whilst this is definitely of the older sort. And it's that's it, really. What would you? Is anything you'd like to add to that as a TLDR? Like, we'll talk more about it.
I think that's a very good TLDR. I think the thing I want to mention about it is that it sort of won a lot of awards this last year. So it won 3 Castle Awards 2024 for Best Game Design, as well as 4 Golden Ennie, so product of the year, best game, best rules, and best layout and design. And that's when I first heard about it, because obviously, as you know, being an Ennies judge, I followed the Ennies quite a bit, because I always use that as my way to inform, like, what's really hot just now, of games that I might not know about or might not find interesting, but obviously have some sort of recognition. And I hadn't heard of Shadowdark. I was at Gen Con when it won all these awards. And then, of course, naturally, after the ceremony on Friday, Saturday, you go, well, I guess I'll go and have a look at it. And it was all sold out by this point. And I was like, well, okay, well, there's some free quick start PDFs. I'll have a read of those. And yeah, I was kind of like a little bit surprised, because in my head, I'm like, oh, well, best game, best game, best is, it must be a brand new system. And it's not. It's very familiar.
Yeah.
And I think, as you said, that has fed into the popularity of it. People are trying to find something that's quicker to set up, but still in the same, almost like adjacent to the rules that they're familiar with, and want to get people into games. I think this is the game for it. And right now on Kickstarter, she says, or this year they had another Kickstarter, because originally this was kickstarted as Shadowdark. They've got one for the Western Reaches setting. So this book doesn't come with its own setting, which again, a lot of RPGs tend not to, core books don't. I will say the Western Reaches setting has made over £2 million. So it's met its goal of £7,444. But people are super keen for it. But I will be completely honest, I haven't seen much in terms of actual play. So I don't think this is getting to people who are, just playing home games. I want to try something different. I think it's in that sort of unique niche where I've not seen particularly many Shadowdark actual plays of it. Like, people talking about it, but I've not seen anyone doing it more regularly compared to obviously the big ones of like Pathfinder and D&D, etc. I recently spoke to Kiefer Mann, who is the author behind The Monsters That Know What They're Doing, and he's made written a book recently called Making Enemies, which is how you create monsters for different settings. And in that, he not only included like Shadowdark, Cypher System, Call of Cthulhu, as well as the most recent version of D&D, he also included Shadowdark as well, which I thought was really interesting. And because, monsters in here are slightly different to how we've done it in previous ones. So, I am curious, because it's one of those games where I will admit the artwork does not appeal to little old me. I'm like, it's very cool, but it's not something where I go, ooh, I want to play this, or I want to run this, personally speaking. But then, as we were reading it through, I was like, oh, it's really straightforward, this game.
Weirdly, is the other side for me. I think the art draws me in so much. Like, it's so my vibe, right?
Yes.
Like, I'm like, and then I felt, again, I'm going to be the voice of dissent here, and it's really annoying because I don't like being a poopy pants, but for want of a better term, the contrarian. But I was seeing this cover, and I'm expecting like super grim dark, really crunchy, like rules light, but really like gritty experience and writing in an inner like design document. I was expecting the Morkborg level of design internally to go ahead along with this very, extremely gorgeous black and white art. And then with that, like a rule set that was some art and the other rule set that actually didn't feel as dark as I was expecting it to be. And I admit a little bit that even though in the TLDR I said it's more akin to the 1E, 2E era, but it's definitely more the 2E era than it is the 1E era. I mean, in the sense that it is lighter than I thought it was going to be. It's a little bit more a bit more. The writing is the writing. The writing is what I'm getting at here, is much more simple, much more like it's very accessible, highly accessibly laid out. Like it's beyond accessible layout, which to me...
Let me tell you, Hamilton, when I saw how big the columns were, I was like, well, this might have been written for people who have eyesight problems, but I am very much appreciative of like, I can read
which
through
I
it
totally,
so easily.
I get, and then maybe that's why it's one layout of the year, but I would say that it doesn't have a lot to it. So I think it's a bit like, it's literally a Word document at the end of the day. Yeah. And I find that very difficult when you had a book at the same year, which had like best interior art, best cover being Eat the Reich in the Ennies and winning that isn't even nominated for layout. And that book is just an absolute joy of actually both being legible somehow, even though it's got illegibility to it, but also absolutely stunning. Or even like the other one, Cyberpunk got silver medal for layout, which is which is more striking and definitely has more. Whilst this is very much like anyone could have done this in a Word document. I'm quite stunned that it won layout, and I'd love to hear what the thoughts are, because I can't see any thoughts on it doesn't say any reason why, but I can only imagine it's because it's so easy to read.
I will say, from my brief perspective into this, it feels like, and I don't know how true it is that the Ennies just decide what category things go in. The people do not apply for this is product of the year and best rules or this and the other. It's the Ennies go, oh yes, best layout. They decide it, which I don't know if I agree with personally, but yeah, I think it is from that. It's big. Like, ultimately, as you said, I think this book could be half the size it is if it was like 2 points smaller in the font.
But that's not necessarily a negative. The size of it. It's just also like the fonts are very basic. The layout is black and white, and it's like it looks. And this is why I'm going to sound like a right prat. But I did a school newspaper when I was like 11, and I thought this would be fun, right? And we did it for like 4 editions, and I think the graphic design was of a higher quality. Yeah, because like it's just nothing to it. There's little grey marks on the left as well where it says like to make Shadowdark character, like I don't know. I think like it doesn't look like it's finished. It just looks like it looks like the notes I make before I design my books. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I actually see that. Like, looking at the whole what is Shadowdark page, what defines this game.
Yeah.
On page 7. I think again the writing of it is so quickly. So like I could give this book to my players and be like, don't look at the page count, just read the first couple of pages and the character creation, and you're done. And before you know it, you've read quote unquote like 50 pages, because it's written, I think, for a PDF. I feel like you could read, I think I've said this before, and I know this is me sounding like a broken record. One thing you learn about online education is that you have to make your text, not academic necessarily, but like have it front load that top bit of the sentence, but also the paragraphs should be 2 sentences most. You can't have reams and reams and reams, because it's really difficult to read. And this is the thing, like this first, what is Shadowdark? It's got 4 paragraphs. It's all just... They're 4 sentences, like 6 sentences total, because they're that easy to read. But ultimately, that could be really small and then at the top. And break it down.
It's an executive summary, isn't it? But that would be so much, as you said, exactly. What would be lovely is if this was like a black page, white writing, beautiful text of what is Shadowdark, and then arranged more like centrally on a singular page, and maybe like a border with some beautiful little scrolls on it, and it says like what is Shadowdark, and it's like the entrance to a tunnel or something like that. You'd be like, like that's what I would do. And I feel like this requires a Shadowdark Extreme Makeover edition. You know what I mean? Like because that's kind of what I feel like.
Marketing departments come in. Hamilton's like, oh my god, lads, let's
this requires like, I'd love to take this text and then I'd love to see a Johan Nor Shadowdark special. Do you know what I mean? Like, or something like that, just where it is just given the sort of like the same weight as that front page and that art with the dragon sort of creature on a rock with the mountain in the background. You know what I mean? That sort of love throughout the pages.
But you see, I wonder if it's the aim of this is to be like old school Essential simplified and just getting people in, and even that's why it's gone into layout as well, not only just the text, but it's like it's dead simple. You don't have to be overwhelmed. Again, maybe trying to appeal to me, but I love the idea of like, what if we glamify these and see what we can do. I know there's an artist out there called Alterdoodle who's done some incredible stuff, and she has been reimagining like covers of famous like core books as like period books, and they look gorgeous. Like Vampire the Masquerade is simply divine. I'll put a link of it in the show notes. But so it makes me laugh you talking about it, because I think obviously that for a certain audience they just want it nice and simply. But it'd be really interesting to see like where can we go with those initial sort of like design notes, like the cover and all that sort of thing, and see how in depth we can get and really bring out that grim darkness.
Yeah, and maybe that's fine. I'm just a very visual person. I'm a graphic person from trade, so it's like part of like why I would like that thing. So maybe it's, I get that people like that, but then that's what I love about Mortborg in the sense that they have the bare bones edition, which is like this. It's this is a bare bones edition to me. Yeah. I think that the imagery that I'm seeing on the cover, says to me one thing. And then the interior says another thing. And I think the writing actually says a third thing, which is closer to the design of the interior than it is to the image on the cover. And I think because the vibe gets lost to me, like I lose the vibe. I'm reading seeing this cover and going, disgusting, over the top Beholder. That's what Beholder should look like. I love it. Now make them super brutal and write text that is just like about blood, gore, people getting dismembered, awful horrific things. You know what I mean? Like super gothic horror vibes is what I feel I'm like expecting. You know what I mean? And if I judge this book by the cover, it's very different to what I'm getting inside.
And I too judged it differently. So I was like, it's a cool cover, but not for me. And then I read it. I was like, oh yeah, I could play this game.
Not to say that but I like the game because maybe it's because we're going on about the thing, but like the game is very much D&D, stripped of its accoutrement and left as everything you would know from D&D, really.
Yeah. I mean, I got very much, I don't know if you've played it, but Darkest Dungeon vibes of that sort of like the look of like, essentially you are going into these dungeons. There's no sort of, as far as I can tell, there's no other city era or anything like that. We've seen it with other games, yet obviously there's this new Western Reaches setting coming out. And essentially the big sort of unique mechanic, she says, or the unique thing is that in this game, a torch only holds back the pressing darkness for 1 hour of real world time. And so you, as a GM and players, have to keep a note of how long your torch is on. And it's like, you can play it minute for minute as you're playing the game, having these timers go down. Later on it says like, hey, you're going to search the room. How long are you searching the room for? About 10 minutes? Okay, let's just mark that down on the timers so that, you can skip to that bit. But I thought that's really, really interesting. And I like that because, again, Darkest Dungeon has that whole thing about the light keeps back the dark, and then as soon as the light goes out, you're more susceptible to monster attacks and all that sort of thing.
It's a great mechanic, and it's weird because in Raceborn, you might get to it, I've actually done a couple of like effects that will happen to you that happen on the hour, and I've said that you can either use real-time hour or GM can define the hour. And I think it's like something that when I was writing that, I was like, I've never read that before. And then it's like, oh, fuck, I've read this. There you go. Classic, never anything new under the sun or in the darkness. But it's a really good mechanic.
Yeah, clocks itself, like obviously we've got clocks in like Blaze in the Dark. Shiver, they've done stuff which is like the Doom clock, whereby, certain actions tick it up. And obviously like quarter past, half past, quarter to midnight, things happen. And they have stuff like the Doom calendar. But this, I've never seen something tracking like minute for minute in real time. Like I'm sure. I think what it's sort of trying to do, and it's something it talks about, is that it's encouraging quick decisions rather than hunting through the rule book. So like, we need a decision now because your torch is running out and you can only be in this part for so long. And I think that's what I'm hoping that what happens during play. Again, we've not played this; it's just reading it through. But but in my head, it's like there's that tension still there. Going like, well, look, we've got one torch left, and it's got 30 minutes left. We can't be. We can try to role play, but it's more like, we're going to do this? Okay, that's great. We're not going to circling around the drain, argue about one thing. We have to come to agreement because as soon as that light is out, we need to have a plan B,
No, 100%. And I think like that's the element of the time, as you said, I think that's what, with the rest of this book, is that lots of simple moves have given very like intended consequences, which are much more bigger than you may expect at the first instance as well, because of those like simplifications that actually somehow, like you just said with the torch, it's like, oh, okay, that's a cool mechanic. Oh, wait, it does all those other things, like you've said, like it's speeding up play. It means that time is an important factor, which actually affects everything that's going on in this adventure as you move forward.
So not just combat, but also like going through a dungeon, like crawling through. Like it suggests playing it in like crawling rounds as you're navigating things as well. So everything it says is sort of time. Now I don't know how, as a GM, how that plays. Whether like people, again, it's because it's going to get used to that idea of play. And just, again, I think that's the only thing I'd say with this, because there's no session zero stuff. There's no safety tools necessarily, like a page dedicated to it. But I think that's the thing I would set as an expectation. Like, hey, everything counts. We'll pause, if we need to. But like, you've got to imagine that we're go. We can't just be like, if we're pausing, we're then moving on the time 10 minutes because we've agreed that we're going to be searching this room, or we're walking this way, etc. Like, there will be consequences. We can't just pause the game essentially and then go make a cup of tea and come back unless we're actually having a bio break. You know what I mean? I know that's a bit convoluted the way I'm saying it, but I think just I would set that expectation as like, you can't. There's no what's the word I think? There's no rest point. There's no save point necessarily.
It's definitely more like roguelike. But, well, not really, but in the sense of like you're going into adventure and you're going to push it as far as you go, which is like the old 1E D&D where it's like you probably might, like the Tomb of Horrors and Castle Greyhawk and the other massive Tomb of Annihilation, I guess, as well, where it's like you are probably going to die in here.
Yes.
Possibly, unless you're really lucky and you make the right and clever decisions. But this kind of feels like, okay, this is just dungeon delving a little bit more, particularly when you come to the random tables and the way it kind of is set up in this initial without a setting. It's very much like, here's like oracles or tables or all these kind of things, a bit like a solo play without that, but for the GM to sort of define and make sort of endless or near endless dungeons that lead to something and have treasures and all these sort of loot tables. But it's like, okay, this is going to be, you're going to have to try as hard as you can to get as fast as you can to get there without all dying, basically. And you've got limited resources, limited abilities, and battle is going to be quick and perilous, which is quite great. And probably that's the thing, is it like at the end of the day, there's definitely like post-COVID, where we all had way too much time on our hands to sit there and read D&D 5e, we've all now got to a point where we're like, well, we can fit in a game every 2 weeks, we're bloody lucky, right?
Yes.
And organising that's difficult. And so the easier and quicker and accessible it is that this is probably what would have happened to RPGs if they had been as big, like in the earlier stages. I know when D&D had a sort of revival post 5e and the sort of like Stranger Things and all that sort of stuff. And it was slowly getting bigger before COVID and then COVID happened. But I think if it was as big as it was after COVID before it, this is what would have happened before anyway, because people were busy, people didn't have the time to do this, and this would have been a marketable thing. And that's why it's here. And because of its relationship to D&D, like, we talk about like Mort Borg being the belle of the ball of Kickstarter, and Shadowdark has completely kicked that in the water, like making 2 million on its last expansion. That D&D still also makes an absolute fortune for people on Kickstarter with expansions, like, and from people that are making quite random stuff that is not necessarily at the same level for the financial gain they're getting from other systems, and even including Mort Borg. And so if you look at it, I think that this has got that best of both worlds ability to capture the market for the Mort Borg aficionado or the sort of rules light people, but also basically is D&D at the end of the day. That it's no wonder that it captures something very, that's what its cleverness is really in like finding that, being the best and the first to really capture that.
I agree.
That moment, that lightning in a bottle, I think.
This is the thing. If I wanted to get the game group into other RPGs that aren't necessarily story driven, but more like trying to get them out of like using or maybe thinking about other mechanics, this would be the way forward, I think, for introducing like I'm trying to think of the other game. I like the other game I've read about recently is His Majesty the Worm, which again is another dungeon delving game, but that's all through tarot cards and using the cards themselves for everything. So you do tests, you're like, okay, it's the suit, okay, you've not passed that, etc. So there's no dice involved. So I think I would start with Shadowdark, then go to His Majesty the Worm, and then just go from there and see what other things to encourage people to like, hey, it doesn't have to be dice, it doesn't have to be D&D. But I think this is just, as you said, it's so streamlined to the point where like casting spells, for example, like again, it's not necessarily anything new, but a number of spells, but you don't have spell slots. The only thing that happens is that if you critically fail, you roll on the mishap table, and then you can't cast that spell again until you have a rest, which I think is great. And the mishap table, I know you were pointing it out to me off recording, is brilliant, and it's not only is it 1d20 worth stuff, but also is defined by tier. So obviously as you're sort of leveling up, the tier list for your spells will change, but also it's more dangerous when you fail a spell. And I was just like, that's great, so that you're not like constantly confined to like, oh well, I rolled a 2, oh okay, like it doesn't matter too much, it is what it is, where it's like, oh shit, you don't know, it's more and more dangerous because the more and more powerful you are.
The miscup table is something very particular. Thanks for reminding me, actually, because I did love that. And it's those kind of things that are just like very subtle differences to the order. Because like miscast tables don't actually occur in D&D anymore, and they weren't in 2e, but they might have been in 1e, I can't remember, but they are something that's come across in so many other formats like Wolfrup and Morkborg with its arcane catastrophes, and the old world one as well has the miscast table, and it's in lots of other ones as well where magic is more dangerous, and it's like it's definitely a trope that you're like, oh, I can't believe it's not in other things more often. But that is a very simple thing to be like, oh, it's still D&D, but this thing happens. You know, that happens in these games, you know, and then did you like that sort of like more, you know, perilous magic? Well, we could try X, Y, and Z sort of thing. Or just like, as you said, just even being introduced to different mechanics, going, oh, there is other ways that this can be run, and this creates different gameplay, is quite an enlightening experience in itself, I think. So, yeah.
But I guess it also makes it worth failing, because that's a big argument we've had recently. 100%. It was like D&D obviously is trying to get away from any real negative effects that you always will. It's always going to be in your favor some way because you're heroes, and we're all like, yeah, but it's quite fun to fail. But obviously, what they're trying to get rid of is like if you're failing, roll after roll after roll. Whereas here is that if you fail, there is a consequence, and it's pretty brutal. Like with all these things, like the other one was Dungeon Crawl Classics, was what I was thinking of as well. They also have spells that when they fail really badly, but if they succeed too well, that's also not great. So I think it's that cool thing of like going like and just playing with that chaos.
Well, a bit like Heart, as we talked about somewhere else, or maybe just between ourselves, I can't remember, but it was like we were talking about it and how like that is you're doomed to fail in an exciting and extreme way, and that's the whole reason behind Heart and the characters created in it. I've done a similar table, but there's one on Illumination, but like I like the idea that somehow that there could be both, and that you could gain benefit from it would be quite fun, but also be completely terrified by it as well, where there's that sort of risk-reward on the roll of the dice. But I think it's totally all of those things. I think it's just, for me, it's just even just the fact that you introduce that to a game, to people as they're transitioning from D&D into maybe other games, is that it's a really fun one that can grab and completely change your aspect on things. Because particularly in D&D, where wizards are literally gods, you know, as they level up, that these become actually, in this, it really retains that idea of you are playing with things very much outside the ken of a human being, right? And you are very fortunate to be even granted the ability to utilize these magics. And if you overdo it, you will burn out and die. And that's something that happens in old D&D books, you know, like I'm imagining regarding into the Dritz novels, there's things where people go in and have issues with their magical potential, overcoming them, particularly in the early ones when he summons a demon that becomes out of his control and that kills the person who summons them. So those kind of things are very prevalent in old D&D and stories from D&D, and it's something that is kind of left unannounced in the games nowadays. And I think it would be so much more fun if you were like, you know, for example, druids, they can summon elementals. It really should have, like, there are sometimes when I can't remember what it is, there is summoning when you can summon a Balrog in Balrog. Is it Balrogar? Balrog?
You're looking at me as if I know, but no.
A gore beast of some description, you summon a demon, and it can, if you fail the roll, it will summon and be hostile to you and not be on your side. But that's very rare when that actually happens in D&D, and it would be much more fun if it's like every time you cast an elemental, you have to roll a d6, and if you roll maybe a 1 and 2, it's not going to be on your side. It would be so much more fun, because that's like, oh, fuck. You know, like, it could be a winning strategy and it could be terrifying.
You know what? I was talking about it again when we were talking about making enemies, is that it's just nice to be able to say to players not to constantly rely on, like, well, I choose these spells all the time, because they always work. If you're presented with a new situation and just going like, sod it, I'm going to try this, and get excited about the unknown, and it keeps them engaged as a result. And that's why I kind of like Shadowdark. Like, you know, the ancestries aren't, you know, they're simplified. You know, it's 6 ancestries of the very sort of like stereotypical, like, we've got human, halfling, half-orc, elf, dwarf, etc.
You do get goblin, which is not commonly in other D&Ds, which is like very good to have, because who doesn't want to play goblins?
Absolutely, yeah. And then you've just got the 4 classes of fighter, priest, thief, wizard, which again just calls back to that the old D&D days. But it's just like, here's your basis, but then, as you were sort of saying, there are random tables for background, alignment, you know, here's some deities that you can think about, but you don't need to think about them too hard. It's just like a quick paragraph each. Titles, which feels very. I don't know if you ever played Fable back in the day, but like you could buy titles, and you as you were going through town, they'd be like, "Oh, there he is, Sparrow! Hooray!" And like I like these. Like you would use these titles as you level up. Like, there's Padfoot. Cool, what a dude. I don't know. Yeah, you can even roll that. You do random characters. All that stuff is in 43 pages. The first 43 pages, but. I could easily just give the whole book to my players and go, just the first 50 pages, please read that. And that's it. That's all you need 100%. To do.
Everything is that simple. As we said, like you've got and even if you're coming from D&D, you're very much aware and attuned to half of these things already anyway. So you're going to be reading it double speed because you'll be like, okay, so you have the same stats, you have the same kind of ideas of class, ancestry, background and alignment, but an AC and all these things. And so you're like, okay, well, I kind of understand how that works. I know those things. So that's pretty quick and easy. Oh, there's 4 classes. They spark literally the 4 things you could do, which is I'm going to just be simple, fighty person. I'm going to be sneaky, roguey person. I'm going to be God-fearing, priesty, magic person with more Healy stuff. And I'm going to be wizard, crazy, OP, going to shoot spells out of my head, but I might die. And I'm going to be easier to kill than the fighter, definitely, but maybe less so than the mage, and the priest might be more tanky or might be somewhere in between. Is the sort of halfway house class. Yeah, actually, the thief has got the same health as the wizard, but the thief has got the benefit. Like, I'm going to be sneaky, and I'm going to have little tricks, and I'm probably going to do slightly more damage if I hit in a good way, sort of thing. And it's so you're going to read 50 pages very quickly because you're not even going to have to take it in that much because you're already going to know it. Alignment, there's no good or evil. Just you are either chaotic, lawful, or neutral, and there's no sort of like good or bad.
Nice. I like that.
I think it's fun. And the same with the gods. The gods are neither good nor bad. They are either lawful, neutral, or chaotic in themselves, and are fun and interesting and don't give you too much. Like there's a little bit to it, but there's not. A lot of it's going to come from your own interpretation of that.
Yeah, because there's like 9 of these gods, but 2 of them are lost to time. You're like, oh, well, that's a perfect opportunity for you, the GM, to come up with some others. Like here's a shrine dedicated to this other lost god. As they go into the dungeon. So yeah, I was like, oh, and just because like again we've done it where we've looked at. Like outer planes and various religions that are attached to it. Sometimes you're like, oh god, there's so many. What to do. So yeah, it's just like trim down, here's some basic ones, and then as a really good jumping off point.
I think there's no need to really go in through things like, because of that simplicity, we don't need to go through things like the gear and the equipment and the kit and the weapons, because they're all what you'd expect. I think it's worth noting. Like, again, it just continues on with a very similar theme. There's sometimes little properties that go with them, but they're very limited. There's not even Forbidden Psalm has got more properties for its weapons, which is a more Borg-like miniatures game than this does. There's no cleave ability, there's no rending ability, there's no other things like that where your weapon is either two-handed or one-handed, and you can either throw it or it's only melee, and you might get finesse, which is strength that swaps for dex sort of thing. But really, other than that, it changes only on their damage type, but there's no additional effect that you can get from those weapons. Like they cause bleeding, or they cause you can have a poison. I mean, you can do poison, but there's no rend, which would be that it overcomes armor, or or as I said, like a cleaving, which is you can cut through 2 people, or you can attack. You've got scimitars, so you can hit 2 people at the same time, or something like that, which is kind of interesting. So it is very, it again just continues to be very simple. But then moving on from that, then as you said, it then moves into magic. And additionally to this, which is we hadn't talked about, is that priests, instead of having this arcane catastrophes thing, they have a whole mechanic which is called penance, which is quite interesting. So if you have a critical failure, if the spell was a pre-spell, your deity is greatly displeased and revokes its power. You can't cast that spell again until you complete ritualistic penance to your deity and successfully complete a rest. So, not only do you not have this mishaps table, which you don't have that, which the wizards have, you have this different thing, which is okay, even though it's a luck of the chance, there is a reason why you have failed, and that reason is because your god has forsaken you for some reason. And I quite like that in the sense of the GMs then got to go like, what did you do?
Yeah, and justify it in some way,
Yeah, you got to kind of justify it, because maybe they haven't done it, but maybe you can, like, think, okay, maybe, and it'd be something the GM would be doing. I was thinking the whole way through of, like, okay, you've chosen a god who's lawful. Did you do something, maybe every time they do something chaotic, just mark it down, you know, or aren't lawful, or just don't take the lawful path towards things. Then I'll be like, well, this is why, and that would be why you're going to have to undertake penance, which might be holy quest, ritual atonement, or material sacrifice that you donate or destroy, and inadequate or subversive penance won't help. And so there's a value of the material you might have to give up. But I quite like this idea that you've marked down all these moments where they've kind of not stuck with their alignment or kind of gone astray, hard if they're neutral, but like gone too chaotic or too lawful, that you would then use that as you have to atone for this particular thing and then try and figure out.
It's like getting a ticket. Like you had all these minors on your driving test and they all add up and you're like, you failed because of these things. Like, oh my God, now I'm going to go take a speed awareness course or whatever. So exactly. I think that's quite fun actually. And I think, again, just setting that up in that expectations when you do your session 0, it's like, hey, so obviously this is different for priests, but so FYI, it might seem like I'm doing it at the whim because you failed it, but I am going to be taking notes. So just keep that in mind and be ready to be like, right, I now need to donate however much, sacrifice however much gold in order to get that spell back in some way. Mm-hmm.
And then like the wizard's mishap, the thing that I was trying to get at earlier, and I think it's just reminded me, is that this skirting the line of something that's kind of more serious and more like perilous, but also I guess then when you get the art further in the book and some of the titles for the wizard mishaps, it then comes back to this very like light-hearted whimsicalness.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? Which I think which is just, it just always makes me think of that front cover going like super terrifying beholder, grim dark, and then I'm like, then this is the list of the tier 1 to 2 is you've got devastation, explosion, they're all exclamation marks. Refraction, your hand slip, mind wound, discorporation, spellworm, poof, the horror, energy surge, unstable conduit. And it's all very much like, aha, and it's kind of like, do you know what I mean? Which is kind of like...
That's really funny. I hadn't thought of it like that, yeah.
Because you've got like mean, terrifying, scary beholder, poof, like
that's funny,
just went poof. You're just like, that's so random. They just explode into a puff of smoke, and you're just like,
I hadn't considered that. You think if you were gonna, I guess, if you're like, let's check the tone, take away the exclamation mark, and then be like, like darkness or something like that, rather than poof. Exactly. Because poof is you suppress all light within a near distance from you, including sunlight and magical light for 10 rounds. Yeah, poof it's not like a magician doing that. It's like
exactly, poof, it was
void.
Gone.
Yes,
and one's called just boom, but not like all exclamation. Then you got arcanomutagenesis, which just sounds like the random thing some crazy wizard would go. Arcanomutagenesis, like this, You flubbed the incantation is one of them, and you're just like, duplicate refraction. They're just kind of like
ethereal bandersnatch.
Yeah, exactly. Ethereal bandersnatch.
It cannot be unseen. Yes, that's so funny. I love that.
I mean, dark plasma aura is one where that just sounds like random word generator, and then when it tries it, like what lurks beyond the veil, it's not like what works beyond the veil. It's what lurks beyond the veil. Because it's got the exclamation mark.
That's so funny. Yeah, if you've been really serious, like you set that tone, and then as a GM, you go, it's a wizard mishap, I'm going to roll for it. It's the Grimlow! Just read it.
And maybe that's what it was going for, but that's where it feels like, I feel like that, like, it's hit both the extremes and not in some way, and maybe this is like from a conceptual point of view, merge the two together cohesively enough for me to feel like it feels cohesive enough as a thing. Do you know what I mean? Like it feel like from a writing point of view, I guess. Like I think like the rules are great. It feels very cool, but there is something that probably in the writing itself doesn't like work to coalesce both those extremes in like a satisfying way that I feel Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay does, where Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay really marks both being grim, perilous, and pretty awful, but also light-hearted, fun, and quirky. And the writing is really on point for that, I'd say. And I don't think the Old World actually does it, which we've looked at for other things. But that one does, and because it's like Warhammer has nailed that anyway in itself. But this doesn't. This feels like one thing pictured and another thing written.
Yeah, that's really interesting because I had the same thing. We've talked about this with Warhammer for myself. When I looked at it, I was like, oh, I don't think this is for me. And then someone was like, well, it's kind of like Blackadder humour. It's like Monty Python. I was like, and Terry Pratchett humour. I was like, oh. Yeah, I get that. And you can play around with stuff. Whereas here, you're absolutely right. It sort of dedicates to this thing. And again, if you're looking for it, I think it's either or. But because maybe there's not a setting that's baked in it, maybe that's the thing as well. But yeah, I guess the language, if you're like, this feels like to me it's this.
I'm showing you a picture of this goat-headed beast person casting a spell. Very cartoony now.
It's very really, on the scrolls on one page, yes.
Yeah, and the internal art is definitely overly cartoony and actually quite comical. There's one where there's like these people sort of guarding a gate and they seem to have these things going wrong and they look a little bit confused. Like there's kind of images like that. But then there's also images like this where you're like, yeah, weird crusty mage man,
like a made man with like lightning around him, like he's super cool. Yeah, absolutely.
On the page just before magic, which I think must be on the spread next to magic, and you're like super cool, slightly like grungy and like old school art, which makes it kind of fun. You're like, it still has that resonance of maybe being a little bit more cartoony, but still in a very cool way. And so I don't know, but I feel like it falls on simple silliness without bringing you along with the darkness to counteract it enough, apart from that front cover, I guess. And maybe that's the problem. Maybe the front cover should have been that weird mage person, and maybe I would have like come to it with more of a, this is a it's actually quite light-hearted game, but it's got mages and spells, but it does, I don't know. That's kind of where I'm at.
There's loads of random tables, and this is me moving on a little bit further. So, gameplay, as we sort of said, is very straightforward in terms of if you play D&D or have a working knowledge of like any sort of rules-like games, works really well in that. Your luck tokens are essentially your inspiration. You can only have one going forward. Combat, very straightforward. But I wanted to quickly talk about the other random tables. So I'm jumping ahead quite a bit. So random encounter tables and like shops and taverns, all that sort of thing. So in the sort of 136 and 138, and then there's random encounter tables. Not only is it like environmental, but it's also like, what about in the artisan district? What about in the low district? So it's urban encounters, but then separated out into things. And I thought that was just really cool. So that you're like, oh shit, we're in this. We are taking a break from the dungeon. We are in the city. Well, I guess we'll roll a D100, and here's your castle district encounter. And I was just like, and again, all these encounters are just one lines. So for example, if I'm on the castle district encounter, 22 to 23, a wild-eyed playwright calls a PC an unread cretin. Like, that's not a fighting thing, but it's quite a fun, like, it's a flavoursome thing. And I just thought that's really cool. That, again, one thing we love, certainly I love, and I'm sure you do, is just like, sure, I'll roll some examples, and if they go to this place, I was like, okay, this activates this, and this, and I can work out a story from there, which could be a combat, but also as a social encounter as well. And I just thought 100%. It was really cool to have a good mix of those, like D100 tables, because often it's like, it's a D20, but yeah, D100 for all of them.
Like, the tables are so good, and I think this is like where you're like, wow, this is where GM's resource is, where it's like really 100%. Catering to them so well. And I would suggest, in my own hindsight, next time I would do like a book, I would suggest that actually doing like, don't go too deep into creating a setting unless you've really got one, like, which I did for my last one. But like, I feel like actually, if you're trying to make a game mode, there is something so like unique. And if you're particularly doing the D&D thing, which is like D&D at the heart of it is not is settingless, and it should be, because it should be it's the go all for all fantasy adventures, and part of the fun is making your own worlds. But here, GMs is for every fantasy genre you're ever going to play, there's such good baseline stuff here for you to have just to go on. And I totally agree. It's super important to give and gift people non-combative encounters, or even aggressive or argumentative encounters, but not combative, or they could lead to combat, but still like things that are going to possibly challenge them, like potentially with their alignment or their deity maybe, or just to challenge them from a role-playing perspective, something that they've got to deal with. Someone's going to call them an insult, like someone's going to insult you, they're going to say your clothes look stupid, or or like something along those lines, like, or something, and that's going to enforce some something to them. Like, and something I was doing, there's which one that I'm not putting out, but it's like a city that I started writing some encounters for, and it's been occupied by these vampires. And I started putting some things in, like, well, you will see vampires not being very, like, the sort of leaders of this thing not being very nice to people, and you're going to see that, and you're going to then make a decision as to how you're going to react to that. Like, and so your players are going to have to see, like, you know, that's something to deal with. It's a much darker setting, and so it's something that, like, you got to talk to with session 0, but it's not like, but it is something that you can do. Or even just like, I had one where it's like a tavern owner is going to come out the door, chuck someone out, and they're going to look at you and blame you for it was them who did it, even though it's not you. And so your players have now got this scenario where someone's blamed, it was their fault. Like, and you're like, me? And that's something that you've then got to do from an encounter point of view.
Yeah.
Is like more fun. It's like you're putting your players on the spot. They've got to deal with the situation, and it does hundreds of those in this, and I think it's really good.
You have that plot hook, but also it then ties back into that priest mishap sort of stuff of, like, you decide one way, and then you could tell well, actually, your god was really pissed off that you didn't take the blame for that thing.
Or you didn't intervene in that thing, or you didn't, you know, or you saw someone stealing something. Like, I've got one where someone's like running on a rooftop, for example, and like it makes you think, like, those things. It's like, well, then in that scenario, and it does those. I'm trying to find them in here, but I can't find them quick enough, so I'm using examples I have in my head, which is like, then you'd be like, oh, I'm lawful, I should stop the thief, right? Like, I should, right? Because they're thieving, but are they Robin Hood character? I don't know. What am I doing? You know, like, and you got to put that moral quandary. Or even if they fail
to do that, and they're like, well, you didn't do the thing. So, well, I tried. So, you could have done it. Always do better. You're like, God, these gods are so cruel. Yeah, absolutely.
And so those things are really great. And I think that the encounter tables in this are epic throughout. Just not even just the encounter ones, just like the random tables.
Just to finish off on the random encounter tables, and also, like I said, there's taverns and shops, because obviously they talk about, like, if they're poor, if they're this, whatever. Again, if you're not like, I don't want to play Shadowdark, I don't want to play D&D necessarily, or this sort of rule, but take these encounter tables and just put them anywhere, because they're so setting agnostic. I just think they're really great. I just wanted to make a big highlight of it because I just thought they were really cool. But
there's Arctic, Arctic as well. Like, there's cave, which they deep tunnels, desert, forest, like you've grassland. So it's literally like high district, jungle. You know, you've got everything you could ever think of, pretty much, that you can have an encounter in, no matter what you're doing.
The only thing, and I don't know how you feel about it, because obviously we've been talking about structure stuff in general, is because it's in alphabetical order. So it goes Arctic, and then Artisan District, then Castle District. So obviously those to me are like urban. I was wondering whether I would do environmental and then urban.
I would have loved just a little, like, you could keep the alphabetical, but a bit of subcategorization between it, of like urban and then wilderness and then maybe magical for something else.
Yes.
Or like
miscellaneous magical of some sort. I wish it might be just one big table. Yeah, absolutely.
That's the only thing that I feel is slightly missing, which is fine because it's staying very much with the simple fantasy. But I know it's got the arcane hazards table. It has a hazards table which has some arcane hazards within it.
Yes.
But I think what would be nice is a particularly like magical like plane or something like that, something that's like a little bit otherness, or like something that was particularly that just felt like if it was going to try and capture all. I think that's something like what's the word I'm looking for? That's Cthulhu, but it's not what would you call it? Otherworldly. I feel like it could really do with like an otherworldly environment, because I think that's something that people might play in this. Like,
I think so.
Trapped in a mage's alter dimension
tower,
in their tower where they've got weird things going on. So just a very much more arcane weird stuff happening is kind of what I would like. 2 tables on that, like random alter plane or something like that, and maybe that's an expansion that could come to them.
I totally agree with you, because I feel like for Shadowdark, it's like, gritty, she says in quotation marks, but like low magic. And like you said before, like the magic, if you do it, it's very dangerous. So I think having, like, because I was just having a quick look for the hazards, I could see like there was like an anti-magic zone and magical silence, but nothing more than that.
No, it's not like a whole arcane hazards only.
Yeah, so I agree with you. Having like a table, it is an expansion of like, well, you go to a quote unquote like bonkers wizard. It's like, my tower of terror, blah. And it's like fireball walls, all that sort of thing. But so it could be like its own magical gauntlet, so to speak.
That's kind of what I thought. I think they could have a couple of magical ones. Like I think like Wizard's Tower could be like 50 instead of D100 if they want to. But and then also I like the idea of like I just think Cthulhu is such a big part, like Cthulhu, but like, you know, the demon realm or like the abyss or something like that, like a planar one, just the classic planes, like or like devil infested place or something like that, you know, could be kind of like things that are quite classic to old school D&D, like the abyss and the hells would be things that would be, I'd really like to see done for this. Maybe that's an expansion that I've missed.
Yeah, no, I agree. What I was going to say, but this has a table. Again, it's just one table. There's not much in terms of descriptions of, you know, it's just like, evocative thing. But it's categorized into like movement restriction, damage, and then weakening. And I just saw at the bottom here on the weakening one, if you rolled a 12, it's memory stealing.
Yeah.
How fun is that? Like, again, so it's enough to be like, oh, it inspires me to do this. And it's kind of like, almost like, your gut instinct to be like, I'm just going to do this. Yeah, you don't know where you put your sword. You don't know who this other person
is. That happens in D&D, in a Planescape adventure. There's a land we went to it. We talked about it in the Outlands, which is the Mind Illithids. There's an Illithid cave.
Yes.
And you can go into the center of it and you can ask them one question. They will answer the ultimate, whatever question it is. They have the answer to it. They know everything. But as you're going through and deeper into the maze, it slowly steals memories from your mind and they request them at the final stage. And if you don't make it through, you could just slowly lose all your memory and become just a wandering thrall. It just kind of reminded me of that, which is kind of, so it does kind of do that. I just think it could be, that's just what I was looking for.
Yeah, like, 'cause they've got like on the previous page, they've got traps. And so again, it's like, is it a trap? Is it a hazard?
Yeah.
All those things. But yeah, I agree. I think it'd be cool to have like a dedicated magical one for people who are like, we want to have more magic, and therefore, as a result, it is more hazardous
Wizard's
as well.
Tower, isn't it? It's really just like, I want the Wizard's Tower one. I want and I just kind of like, I think like ending up in a portal to the abyss feels very D&D 1-y. Do you know what I mean? Or someone's trying to raise demons and therefore have opened a portal to hell.
Yeah.
Like, it feels like something they would do. That's kind of what I felt was missing. But I mean, I'm talking about these being the best part of the book by far, and I'm just wanting more because they're that good. Not that I'm actually belittling it in any way.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. 100% on that. You wanted to talk about the modes of play, though.
It did, yeah. It was part of the gameplay that I really loved because it showed... What it showed to me when I read it is that, okay, you've understood that this is simplified, but because of that, it opens you up to so much more adaptation
100%.
Really easily, and they've done it really well with this. So you've got a number of modes that play on the key manifestation of the light. So you've got the Blitz mode, which is light only lasts 30 minutes, not an hour. Then you've got Chaos mode, which is re-roll initiative at the start of every combat, which I quite like. Deadly mode, death timers are always 1, so you don't have and it's only DC 18 intelligence to stabilize dying, which is not great. Fatality mode, which is you just die at 0 hit points, which is quite simple. But then it gets more into it, like grinder mode. With each successful rest, you only regain 1 stat damage per stat and HP equal to 1 roll of your hit points die, which means that it's like you only regain like that one, so it's a little bit harder to roll advantage. And spellcasters choose 1d4 lost spells to regain after a successful rest.
So it's not just a full rest. Yeah,
just a little bit more difficult in a nice way. Hunter mode, defeated monsters grant HP equal to half their level rounded down, which I think was okay, but it means it's like you want this to be a slower experience of gaining HP.
100%.
My thought when they said Hunter mode before I read it, though, was this was going to be like they would have like double HP but grant you the same XP, which I think would be kind of fun. So
I think I was going to say that sounds more, because if you're fighting monsters, especially with the XP system itself, so you level up. It's for each level, it's your level times 10. So the first level, because you start at 0, is 10, second one is 20, and it resets every time. Yeah. So again, you could easily speed it up depending on what the GM's like, is it XP per monsters or story or milestone, etc. Yeah, here I was like, it's going to take a bit of a grind, but I like the idea that it's harder, but you get you get more stuff in the combat.
Because it makes you feel like you're the whole point of the game is beast hunter, and therefore I can make the beasts harder to hit and harder to kill, and so then you're going to have to be thinking more about your tactics, which makes you more of a hunter character. Then you have to think about that, but you're going to gain the same XP.
Well, that comes into your whole thing about it's much darker because you're like, these creatures aren't going down.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
100%. Yeah.
And then momentum mode, you have advantage on checks to repeat an action you failed if you try the exact same action again on your next turn, which I really like, and I want to implement similar as
That's really cool.
Because I think luck, I think, is a fun thing to have, and I think playing on the fact that you could do luck as like a min-max mode, and luck as so you could do like luck. I thought like unlike this, which is like luck when you do something and you succeed, you get advantage on your next roll to do the same thing. So it's kind of like, if you're doing well, you're on a roll, and it's going to help you gain until you. But then if you fail, the same happens. If you fail, you got to roll with disadvantage next time, and if you're in a bad spot, you just get stuck in a loop until you get out of it.
Yeah,
which I think is quite fun. Whilst you could have a balancer, and I like the idea of having the choice, which is this, which like you've done badly, well, you're going to get benefit next time. You do good, you're not going to do so well next time, or like your hits aren't going to be as strong next time because you've kind of got that. And I quite like this idea, the momentum mode, because if you're wanting your characters to feel like you're finding like you're playing the game and it's actually becoming quite tough, and you think this isn't, they're not having as much fun, they're not enjoying that sort of gameplay, then this is a really simple way to go, okay, well, look, you haven't had a good time this time, you failed this time, but next time you get advantage. You're feeling like it's going to increase your chances of enjoying, being a part of the game.
It feels very cinematic, doesn't it? It feels like, they've been hit down, they're not doing it, and then they just do it, and it's like, because they're so solidly minded at it. And damage dice explodes as well. I love that, because that's, again, it gets people excited about rolling 100%. Dice and stuff like that. So I do think it's a really cool one to implement. Again, with like the just any of these other ones, like the chaos mode and all that sort of thing, because like you can mix and match them for sure.
And the pulp one is the ultimate version of that, which is kind of what you said. It's the hero mode. It's the pulp fiction sort of like, we're the heroes of the story here, which is that you just get no maximum luck tokens you can have. You start with 1d4 each. You can use a luck token to turn a hit into a critical hit. You can also then use a luck token to take an extra action. Ooh. And you can use the luck token to force the GM to re-roll a roll.
So good.
And I think that's great, because if you are thinking like, I want to do a one shot of this, I want to get people excited about this, I want this to be like maybe an experience for my players, and I want to really have fun, I'm going to put some really badass monsters against them. We're going to go for dragons, we're going to go for serious shit, but in exchange, you're going to get pulp mode, guys. So let's go for it, okay? Like, just enjoy yourselves.
It does feel like New Game Plus when you're going through these modes and trying out. Yeah, I think if I was trying this first time, I'd definitely try it as a GM, just base mode without any of these things 100%. In. Yeah. But then, I think afterwards I'll be like, okay, I want to try momentum mode and pulp mode together. Like, I don't think doing all of them at once, that's a lot, and I don't think they would work necessarily.
But I could imagine, like, for example, you were in a session, you're in a campaign, and maybe you could even you could bring pulp mode in, like they come across a Fey wanderer, like some sort of Fey archmage, sort of trickster god character, and they're coming up. They know they're coming up for something big. You're kind of feeling like, I don't know if they're going to be able to do this.
Yeah,
but they get this little boon of luck, and it's like a token of luck. They can use it whenever they want. You say, like, you've got these charms or something like that. It's a one-use thing. They do, like, a quest for the Fey Mage. They gain them in exchange for it. And then they can press the let's go button. And for that session or for that day, they've gained, like, a luck potion, basically, which means it goes pulp mode, and that's kind of like that's the kind of thing they could save for the final boss, and it's kind of like or the mid boss, maybe not the final boss because you want that to be brutal, but maybe for like a mid boss, like in the middle of a campaign, it could be a fun thing to like, allow them to use. And maybe only one character uses it, and the rest of them can save them for other times. So one person's just living in pulp mode at the moment, and that could be kind of fun.
I think as long as the player remembers it, because I think the GM just has a lot to think about it. But I agree.
It would have to be down to the player, but it's like, I think as a GM, gifting that to your players, I think that's a fun way.
The other thing I think is missing, I think, like the talk about how the GM rules stuff, the advice it gives, it's really good. There is like the tiniest bit on session 0 that I have just spotted here. One thing, and
it doesn't say anything about safety tools.
It doesn't talk about safety tools. But the other thing, and I know I can bang on about this ever since we talked about Mothership, and obviously Quinn's Quest is the one that talks about it a lot, is the idea of relationships. It says here, like, Session 0, it's an opportunity for the players to establish how the characters know each other, build out backstories and roleplay certain scenes. But then start small, just start in the middle of a fight. They should already know stuff, so you're starting that action, which I think is great. I think there's a missed opportunity to have a relationships table. That we can have a deep 100 relationships table about like, oh, we're trying to find this person's whatever, or we've been set on the quest. Like, that's the only thing I think that you've got so many tables, one more on just D12s of like how we all know each other, or even like I know this person because of this, set relationships. I just think it just, I know it sounds so silly, but I just think. Yeah. I think everyone will be buying into this anyway because your characters might just die instantly, especially if they're level 0. But I think it just gives you that thing in mind as a reason why you would care about someone if they go down in a fight. It's not like, well, my light's going out, but I care about someone. So it just gives you a reason to help them.
It was one of the funnest parts of the old world when we made our characters for it, was those relationship tables, and they created really good role-playing moments. And as you said, like, reason why you would care and not care for them, particularly, so you might have a rivalry with them, which I think is interesting and like makes for a good emotional like context for the game. Like in our old world game, B and Tay didn't like each other, but she nearly died and I nearly died. We both tried to save each other, because if I save them, they will owe me. It wasn't because we want to save them, it's because I'll have one up on them. Yes. It's kind of like that kind of thing is much more of an option. So I think I totally agree. Really would be good. I think the session 0 thing as well, 100%.
Like, to be fair, like separately in your role part of it, it does say the pact. You and your players are gaming together to have fun, prop each other up, and strengthen bonds. This is the pact. It is often unspoken and unseen, but it's always felt. It is based on goodwill, respect, and fellowship. Its enemies are selfishness, antagonism, and arrogance. Decisions to defend the pack are always the good ones. So that's essentially the thing. They're like, don't be a dick. Everyone's, so that's what it is there. And I think, yes, fair enough. But just we know from reading lots of RPGs, from playing at different tables, is that sometimes you have to be like, it's nice and straightforward, but you have to say, hey, let's not punch down. And here are ways that you punch down. Because again, people just aren't aware of it. So that's the only thing, I think, at the expense of it trying to be accessible to people, not going into detail specifically about that hinders it. But I think obviously you and I, because it's so at the forefront of our minds when we're creating content, we always have to be like, we have to say the quiet part out loud for everyone, even though we're all agreed around this table what it is. So that, I agree. I think it's more of it would be good, but I think it makes sense that it is as short and efficient as it is in this particular book.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to mention before we sort of maybe do an overview is the Wizards and Thieves game. So whilst this doesn't necessarily have a setting, it has a small gambling game, like a one-page gambling game in the thing itself, which I thought was really interesting. We've talked before about having games or cards or something like that in your settings already. But having this game of Wizards and Thieves, and basically, again, it's just very straightforward. To begin, players agree to a number of coins each will bring to the game, typically 20, and they add 6 coins to the pot. All players roll 3d6. The person with the highest result becomes the active player, and it moves clockwise. Rolls of 6s are wizards, thieves are 1s, and they cancel each other out. And you then declare if you want thieves or if you want wizards, and then you just go from there in terms of the success levels. And I just thought that's really fun and different, and I think again an easy way to get on board. It uses dice. You're not trying to get anything else additional out, and I just thought that's cool to have that in and have that as a change of pace again for a social encounter, perhaps.
It's a fun little game, and like, what was the one 3-card ante? Is it called? Wasn't it? What was it called?
It's 3-card ante and Dragon Ante is the D&D
Dragon Ante
one.
3-card ante, I think maybe the real version. But yes. No, I think it's a nice little like interlude into gameplay. I think it's fun to be able to use dice. It's better than just roll ups, rollies, just like who gets highest number. And so it's a nice little addition to the game. And I wonder if it makes it into the setting in a particular way. I wonder if there's more in the setting of West Marches like that, which I think would be quite fun, like a gambling thing. Because it does state like taverns, when it does a taverns list, it gives you like what it's known for, and one of them is like gambling den as one of them. But it'd be kind of fun if there was a wider expanse on like on that, because for some reason when it comes to D&D, people like you're already rolling dice, so you might as well like go with the luck thing and make it gambling. Why not? I think the only thing the last big chunk of this book is the monsters, and I think, heck, do you get a lot for your money here?
So
I
many.
think you get a lot for your money here from like that's the thing. I think it's so simple in the rules that then if they did not do all these other things, which clearly why it's so good is that they filled in all the blanks on the sheet. You've got Mad Libs set up for decades on this game because you you've got not only all those encounter tables, but all those encounter tables have a lot of enemies on them and monsters on them, and all those monsters are here represented with everything from, your standard like demons, devils, and all those things, as well as dinosaurs and dragons and everything you'd like, but then everything you could pretty much have remembered from old school D&D days. You've got Afriti, you've got Jinn, you've got elementals, aboleths, you've got oozes, you've got everything that you would want to play in. I don't even know how many there are total, but it's pages and pages and pages of. It's even got like nightmares and all those things that you remember from it. But I'm trying to look at how many pages it is. I think it's nearly.
I think about 50, but for
pages.
each page, there's like 4 or 5 very short, very efficient stat blocks. Again,
Not
looking at it,
far off 100 pages. It's 80 pages. 80 pages.
Yeah.
Monsters. Yeah.
And again, all of it is straightforward. Like, it's like, okay, for example, I've got the Hellhound open here. Like, it's got, the AC 13, hit points 19, attack 2 bite plus 4, 1d8 or 1 fire breath, movement double near, so obviously quick in that sense, strength plus 2, dexterity, blah, 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 blah. And then it just has impervious, it's fire immune. Fire breath fills a near-sized cube extending from the Hellhound, DC 15 dex or 3d8 damage, cannot use again for 1d4 rounds. Boom, done. That's it.
It's not a lot. I mean, even like you're talking like Archdevil's got 3 things. It's got a crown of nullification, which is like any spell hit at it reflects back on the caster unless you roll a 20 plus. But like that's it. And it's got ability to control people. But then the imp actually gives you the contract ability, which is the imp can then deliver the contract with an Archdevil separate from the Archdevil itself. So the Archdevil itself won't actually make contracts with you or deals with it. You can still do the devil deal with an imp through it, which I think is kind of funny. Like Wraiths, for example, have like they're immune to morale checks, only damaged by silver and magical sources. Classics. Their in place of attacks become corporeal, incorporeal, which I think is quite fun. And then they do like this life drain ability. So it's like, they're kind of like, they've got a lot of hit points. It's quite hard to hit them, but really all they're going to be doing is sucking the life out of you slowly, which is kind of fun. And like a wyvern just does poison. That's all it does. Like it doesn't really do a lot. Does have an attack. Those though do have rend, which I think is quite good. So you see more of those things, the sort of attack characteristics I was saying that aren't in weapons that the players have. You do find those effects coming into the monsters, which shows that the monsters actually are where the adaptability is coming from, which does fit more into the sort of grim and perilous when you're like, wait a minute, they can do all of this? What? They can do that as well? They can take away my armor ability and stuff like that?
Because it makes a lot more sense, yeah.
Yeah, it definitely does. It's definitely like, it's not heroic fantasy anymore, and I think that's really... kind of, I think the monsters are some of my favourite parts of it, because they're done really simply, but every single thing is done, a couple of them are like, you've kind of been a bit simple. It's been like, kind of like, you simplified a dragon to one ability. That's kind of quite a lot for me, maybe. But then most of the time, I'd say 95% of them, there's always something that's really cool. Like Vulture's Carrion Tracker can track dead flesh unerringly within a mile. It's all you need. And it's everything it needs, and like that's quite fun. And maybe you could harness that somehow. That could be interesting. Like,
yeah, I like that. Like again, you can really put. Like I'm just looking at the Lich here, and like trying to look at spellcasters. And again, so like it has like 5 spells, and like Sigil of Doom, which is an intelligence spell, DC 15, one target of level 9 or less within near distance, DC 15 Constitution, or goes to 0 hit points. So it's that sort of power word kill sort of vibe, right?
Yeah.
But again, I don't need anything else of it. I don't need like I know exactly what that is, again, from my knowledge of D&D, but I'm just like going, damn, level 9 or lower, you've got the save, otherwise you go to 0 hit points. If you're doing that horrific mode, you're dead. That's it. Done.
100%. Whoa. Talking about liches, I love the picture of the undead creature before treasure. It's one of my favourite pieces of art in this whole book. I think that is banging. I think that's great. Whoever this artist is, I forget. And there are artists on the...
Several artists, I think,
in the inside cover, but I think it's clear who... They state who the different artists are, and I just want to...
Oh, yes, because, this is what I like. So, in the credits, obviously, Kelsey... Dionon, I believe is how you pronounce their name, wrote, designed and laid out, and then all the artwork, you've got 9 different artists, but yeah, each of their work is like, it's done by page number, which I think is a good way of doing it, actually. Like, again, I'm always a big fan of having names near close things, because I'm very much the parent of like, well, that's my child's painting. But I think this is great as well, because then you actually know who's done it.
It's Lucas who's doing the art that I think I'm really a big fan of. I think it's really good. The treasure, again, is just is another set of tables, which is like, just goes on. Like, there is so many stuff. There's not only like, you've just got like treasure you might find, but you've also then got mundane items, boons, magic item attributes to go with those magic items, that you can make yourself, so you can like make your own magic item, armor, potions, scrolls and wands, utility weapons. And then you can give like weapons item personality.
Yes, we always love that. That's great. Secrets as well, blessings. Yeah.
And then the magic items list goes on from page 301 all the way through to page 325. So like, there are so many cool artifacts for you to like. So it literally is like build a dungeon to the extreme. Like, and you mentioned Dungeon Crawl Classics. It's definitely got that vibe, or like the game Darkest Dungeon, which is like this sort of roguelike. This other idea that like, you're not going to run out of things here to deal with or gain or loot, which is quite fun.
So we've looked obviously at the core book in its entirety, the sort of 300 plus pages. But I would say if people are interested in knowing more, but like, I'm not sure if I can commit to that. Like, to get the hardcover copy and the PDF is nearly $60. So that's a lot. I would say there are 2 free quick starts, one for players and one for GMs, which have some pre-generated characters and a thing. So you can see all this stuff in action. But I will say, like, I think the encounter tables, all the treasure stuff and the monster stuff, because it's just put in such a simple format, I think it's just such a cool way to look at it, and definitely something I would like to take forward into other games that I'm running particularly.
No, I agree. I think that's what's great about it. And I think even if you are playing D&D, if you want just those encounter tables, will be super beneficial to all of you out there. Yes. And even the treasure, like, for someone who has gone along and who's a DM who's willing to like make their own things a little bit but want a little bit of help, taking any of the magical artifacts in here could be really fun things that you can just take and put into D&D actually, even, or to any other game. But like, I think for example, you can have a wand of warding if you need something like the Tome of Gehenna, which has like, you can cast a random wizard spell scroll. It's players inside the tome placing spell scroll from the prior day. That doesn't have to be for Shadowdark. That can be for any game. Do you know what I mean? And so, like, even as a resource for GMs, 50% of this book is, or a big chunk of this book is random tables, which are actually gameless. Obviously, fantasy game, but gameless in a sense.
Oh, well, Hamilton, thank you for reading through Shadowdark with me. I think we've gained a lot from it. And I think, would I play this? I think so. I think I'd like to see it run and see, how, especially the timer stuff, because I think that's what it's selling itself on. But I think you and I have been finding it more interesting, like you said, the encounter tables. And, like, we find it as interesting as this is really cool from a GM's perspective.
Resource, yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know, again, if we play it, but yes, it is fine. You know what I mean? I don't know, like, I guess my enjoyment has been reading it going, it's got me some really cool ideas as a GM, but as a player, I don't know yet if I enjoy it. But I think, as you mentioned, the modes of play make it really engaging. The timers, 100%. As long as we're on it, keep it very engaging. And so, it'd be interesting to try things out, I think.
I think personally, as a player and as a GM, I've always been about gifting players more things to manifest their player is fun. And I think that this lacks that from a role-playing point of view and from a gameplay point of view. Not that they should be overwhelmed, but I do think that giving players things that allow them to affect their characterization more and optionally as well is something that I think is lacking from it, and definitely can come from the GM as well, and that's not a problem. But I think for me, that's the one thing that I miss. And also, reading it's given me a hankering to play D&D again, actually, of all things. But then going back to like the Planescape setting, which I love and I haven't been in a long time, and I was thinking, and this has made me think about it more, or going back and playing some of those old school ones like Tomb of Horrors, or even just finding some of the old books that I've got of that era, and just having a game in that is made me want to do that more than it makes me want to do this, weirdly. Which is, I guess, I don't know why, but I feel like I think maybe I'd like to read the West Marches and see what the scenario, like the setting is like, and maybe that would like capture me more, and maybe that'll give me more things to be like characterily attuned to, because really this is like, at the end of the day, it's borderline like a solo play mode without the GM oracles, I feel like, and I feel like it's just dungeon crawling at the end of the day, and that's fine.
It is what it is. Yeah, I was just trying to look up, see when it's supposed to be coming out, this the West Reaches game. I wanted to see when
it was. So West Marches is the type
I'm also the same.
Estimated delivery December 2025.
Oh, very close.
But that would be the Kickstarter, so it might not mean that it's up for sale until a little bit later, because normally like for example myself, like you have to get all your Kickstarter things out as like a priority and then sell then do the other any additionals after the fact.
There's some previews of it that are in the Kickstarter previews that is on that page from a Dropbox, so maybe I'll have a look at that at some point. But yeah, I think overall I'm glad we looked at it, and like I said, it's so interesting to see this hype, because it wasn't something I'd seen necessarily in the circles that I've been in the actual play, but actually maybe it's one for the home games. Maybe it's one that people are trying more up at home.
Yeah, and maybe if you were going to be doing D&D, you might be like, let's just use this rule set, but we can play one of the adventures, or we could take one of the settings. Like I could be in Waterdeep, I could be in the Forgotten Realms, I could be anywhere, and just utilize this. You know, I know my D&D, I know my lore, I've got my world, and I just want to simplify it all down, and everyone can just be 4 different things. And like looking at the Western Reaches, even though it gives you a number of different, I think it gives you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different classes. One of them is a painted witch, which is kind of cool, but the other is like an armoured knight, a silent monk, a scar pit fighter, a quick-witted explorer, a seafaring warrior, which still stick within... They're just kind of like subclasses in a way of the existing ones. The silent monk sounds very much like an extension of the priest. You've got the armoured knight and the pit fighter, which are fighters, and the seafaring warrior is kind of maybe more thief-like, and the quick-witted explorer probably thief-like, and the witch being a sort of mage class. And I don't know, I think it's quite... thing, and it's a sandbox setting, flexible in the sense just similar to Shadowdark style. You don't have to memorize lore; you'll discover it as you go, which I'm interested to see.
Well, Hamilton, thank you so much. We have another RPG on the big bookshelf of RPGs we need to read about. So what is it that we're reading next time, so people can get excited for it?
I feel like, Fiona, you could get some particular like royalty-free music to chuck in right now, because there's a particular sound that would so explain what we're doing right now. Because imagine dark, moody lights, bit of steam rising up from a neo-noir city where there's...
I'm doing the Blair's. Whoa.
We're doing Blade Runner.
Yeah.
That's what we're doing. We're doing Blade Runner. I've run it. I ran it a very long time ago. I still need to edit it. It really annoys me, but it's a long story for that. But it's amazing. I think it's one of the best RPGs if you want to run a detective story. That's my little sub word for that, is that it's the one system that I looked at, made a story out of, like wrote my own story out of, and it helped me make a detective story. And it was however successful people might find it, I really enjoyed it, and I think it's a really great game, really great setting, obviously because of like just being amazing movies in their both of them in their own rights. But I think it hits on a lot of great tropes. However, it is flawed. It has some issues that are definitely worth talking about, and I think are something that we picked up very early on when we both read it, actually, at the time. And things that I think there is like warnings that I think people should. I think there's definitely like a bit of a PCA that we could do as part of our Blade Runner experience as well, because it falls into traps. Let's just say,
absolutely.
But other than that, that's Blade Runner, and I'm excited to talk about it.
I'm excited too. So in case you've been living under a rock, there's a Blade Runner. The RPG is by Free League, one of our favourites. We've done a couple of them. A neo-noir wonderland that will take your breath away one way or another. That's the tagline. And so people, and obviously, like, we'll be looking at the core book for this. I know there's been a couple of other starter set, which again will have the same rules as the player, but we're not going to look at scenarios necessarily. We'll talk about our experiences with the game you ran. fun. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it, because it's been a little while since I've read it. One thing I say, and I say this about all Free League stuff, is that if you are thinking of, like, I'd want to get into one of their games, but I'm not sure where to start, their starter sets are the best thing for it. Like, I thought that about the One Ring. I think this about Blade Runner as well. I think it's
Blade
got
Runner
so much.
is a really good one, actually, and it's got a good starter adventure. It really gets you in. I also think the storyline for the new one, something Angels, I forgot what it's called, is
City of
very
Angels,
interesting.
Something like that.
Which is all about the uprising of the replicants and like their sort of desire for freedom, which is pretty cool.
Fiery Angels.
Fiery Angels, yeah.
City of Angels is, I think that's a musical, but never mind.
It's also a movie with Nicolas Cage playing a dead guy.
Yes. There you go.
Yeah, there you go.
All right. Well, friends, thank you so much for listening to us whiffle on about Shadowdark and it not being as dark as we would like it to be. But if you're interested, come check out the Sibling podcast, which, if you're listening to this, you're probably already listening to. It's a DM's Book Club where we talk about D&D, sort of. I mean, these podcasts are now basically interchangeable because it's just more fun. Hand gestures everywhere, cover to cover. But we will hope to see you there. And obviously, all of our stuff, both Hamilton's City Macabre, my one of my rolling event, everything we're doing, they'll all be in the show notes as well. So please go check that out. Thank you so much for listening, and we will
see you on the flip side of the page.
Bye.
Bye.